was waking up, there she lay with her head on my shoulder. We were so close to one another, I could smell the fresh clean scent of the gel she would put in her hair to keep her curls intact. Her name was Sarah. She was Latina with long dark hair and big brown eyes. I had only known her for 4 months, but I couldn't help feeling an attraction to Sarah and a connection I had never felt with anyone else. Our friendship had started out innocently, with us hanging out from the first day of 8th grade year to the sleepovers that followed. When we weren't lounging around her house, I would be at her volleyball games. I never missed one. Sitting on the cold metal bleachers in the gym, I had a perfect view of Sarah. The referee blew his whistle, and one by one, the girls went to shake hands at the net. The teams then took back to the court. The game was about to begin. As the ball went back and forth over the net, my heart started racing and my legs shook. Then I see Sarah spring into the air, extending her arm back to strike the ball. 1 point Hornets, number 20, the ref reported. I jumped up and cheered, "Go Sarah!" as she looked back at me and gave me a big wink, followed by a grin. I have to admit, it wasn't her skill that had me go into every game. What drew me in was the skin-tight jersey with the spandex. The way her body would perfectly fill out the uniform was mesmerizing. At this point, I had this constant battle within myself, questions I didn't have the answers to. It was as if she was a magnetic pull, and I was being drawn to her by an indescribable force. It was supposed to be boys and girls who felt this way towards each other, not those of the same sex, right? I didn't feel guilty for my affection towards guys, so why did I feel this way when it came to girls? Was it normal for me to have these feelings, or was there something wrong with me? Had I become defective? I was contemplating if I should tell her how I felt towards her or not. I had seen little things she would do, frequently brush up against me, always making the effort to constantly be together, even if it meant canceling other plans she had, and making excuses to keep me over longer when she knew I had to be home before the streetlights came on. I thought maybe she liked me as well. On the other hand, maybe I just liked her so much, I couldn't decipher friendliness from flirting. One late October night, we were in her room, sitting on her cold hardwood floor, talking about anything that came to mind to keep the conversation alive. Her body faced mine as we sat with our legs crossing. She had asked me everything you could think of, from my favorite color to my likes and dislikes, as well as anything else in between. We had learned a lot about each other, things neither of us told anybody. Then came a question I wasn't anticipating. Looking at me, she had asked, "Do you ever think about things you shouldn't be thinking about?" All I could think of was, is now the time? Do I just come out and tell her? Yes, of course I do. I think about you all the time. No, I couldn't possibly say that. It would be a suicide mission if she hadn't felt the same way. Like, what do you mean? I responded. She didn't say a word. Instead, her warm brown eyes seemed to peer deeper into mine, as if she could see every inch of my being, inside and out. I was now fully exposed. I felt completely and utterly naked. She started to lean in towards me, feeling as if time started to slow down. Was she going in for a kiss, I thought? Is this really happening? Her eyes were now closed. Shit, it's happening. Close your eyes and pucker up. Don't screw it up, I punched myself. I did what any normal person would do. I kissed her. With her lips pressed against mine, I couldn't believe this was actually happening, but at the same time, I was enjoying every second of it. We slowly pulled our heads apart as her eyes began to flirt with me and her lashes fluttering. She smiled and rested the tip of her thumb on her lip. I'm sure my expression on my face was nothing but sheer surprise, with my eyes still open big and my face beet red. My first kiss, and it had been with a girl. Not just any girl, but with Sarah. I like you. A lot, I quickly added. I know, and I like you too, she said while smiling, with her dimple on her left cheek making an appearance. Why did it take so long for you to tell me? I didn't know what to say besides the truth. Honestly, I just thought you weren't into me like I was you. I thought you were just being friendly towards me. Do all your friends flirt with you? She jokingly asked. No, you're the first, I told her while smirking. After that night, I had adapted to having a girlfriend. I could finally show my affection towards her without feeling like a creep. The sleepovers got a little more intense. We couldn't get our hands off of each other. Nestled up against one another with our legs intertwined, she had single-handedly become my greatest weakness. A few months later, we had gotten off the bus and felt spontaneous. Thinking we were in the clear, we tried holding hands to walk over to her house. To our knowledge, we were just that, in the clear. I had held her hand multiple times before in private, but to be doing it publicly had a completely different effect. I was nervous to be doing this out in the open and exposed. I glided my hand down her arm, with our hands interlaced and our palms against one another. It felt like we were an actual couple, declaring our affection for one another. I was in paradise. I suppressed my apprehensions the best I could, and really existed in that moment. It was a simple gesture, yet beautiful, at least while it lasted. A group of teenage boys had apparently seen us and decided they wanted to share what they were thinking. They passed by us and started laughing, calling out dykes. I had no idea what that word even meant. Were they talking about my shoes, I thought? We went about our day and finally arrived at our house. Reflecting on what had just happened, we decided to ask Mom what a dyke was. Coming down the stairs, we smelled a savory aroma filling the house. We headed to the kitchen to clear up our confusion. As we plopped down on the bar stools in front of the kitchen opening, we could see her mom preparing dinner. She had her hair up while wearing a polka-dotted apron in the form of a dress. Turning around to see us sitting there, she said, "Hey girls, what are you two up to?" Sarah didn't waste any time. "What does a dyke mean, Mom?" she asked. Her mom looked at us with confusion and asked, "Why do you need to know what that word means?" Sarah, trying to sound truthful, responded with, my friend was talking about a dyke on the bus." Her mom then chuckled and explained that a dyke is when two women are in a relationship, at the same time assuring us that it was morally incorrect. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were looking at each other expressionless, our eyes only growing larger the more her mom continued on. Thinking about those teenagers who engaged us earlier that they could possibly be aware about our secret was petrifying. Afterwards, we agreed absolutely no one was allowed to know, because we both knew if we were seen together, even for a moment, we would soon be recognized as the outsiders. Despite what we had agreed on, the next day at school was an unpleasant surprise. My fellow classmates would whisper things when we would walk by and stare at us like we were some kind of aliens that didn't belong. That was the longest day of my life. After school had ended, I remember being on the bus and sitting next to Sarah when these two girls came up and confronted us about our situation. They had stopped in the middle of the aisle to look at us and ask, "Why aren't you holding hands?" with a nauseated facial expression planted right on their faces. Sarah's brows began to furrow, her breathing now heavy, and her eyes glaring back at them. Throughout the whole encounter, I didn't say a word, only looking over at Sarah to somehow let her know that it was going to be okay. However, Sarah was quick to respond, "That's disgusting. I don't know what you're talking about, but we only like boys." Desolation overcame my body, leaving me confused and speechless. I couldn't believe she was saying this with me sitting right beside her. Was it that easy for her to dismiss these past several months we had shared together? She's the one who leaned in to kiss me, I thought to myself. Pleading her case lie after lie, I had felt betrayed. Betrayed by someone I confided in, by someone who I spent all my time invested in. Betrayed by someone who wasn't even the enemy. Once the confrontation was over, the bus had come to a stop. "I only said those things so they would just leave us alone," she explained. As I looked away from her with my lips starting to tremble, I was hurt. I dragged my feet to stand, clenching onto my backpack with my eyes shifting back to her. "Then you should have just stayed silent, because saying nothing at all would have been better than denying it." Sarah's eyebrows raised, with her eyes growing wide and her mouth slightly open, both blinking back tears. Nonetheless, we walked our separate ways, and although it pained me, I never looked back. Coming home with tears now streaming down my face, I decided to open up to my mom. Being that we were so close with each other and practically best friends, I felt I could confide in her and no longer have this secret bottled up anymore. I sat her down right beside me on our living room couch. She had her army greens on that made a crunching noise every time she would move. Her blonde, box-tied hair was in a low bun, and her piercing blue eyes stared blankly into mine. I could tell she was trying to figure out what I was about to say before I had a chance to say it. All I could see was the pride in her eyes she had for me. Then, like the plague, my thoughts started to spread quickly, asking questions I never thought of until this very second. Was she going to be disappointed in me? Was I about to destroy her world? Would I lose the relationship I once shared with her? "Okay, what is it, babe?" my mom asked while muting the television. At the same time, that's how I felt trying to begin. She saw that I was struggling with the right words to say, but nothing was coming out, so she stopped me and said, "I think I know what you're about to tell me. You're having sex." At that moment, I was actually relieved she had thought that, because then I felt telling her I liked men and women would somehow be easier news than finding out her little girl was having intimate relations. I let everything out and told her all about Sarah and the events leading up to now. My heart was racing so quickly, my palms started to sweat, and all I could focus on was the green rug lying on the floor that I had never paid any attention to beforehand. My mom took a long pause, lifted my head up. Our eyes were now level with each other's. Looking me in the eyes, she said, "Do not let these people define who you are. So you like girls too, okay, but that's not what defines you. Do you hear me?" As I exhaled deeply and the tension in my body became relaxed, all I could muster up to say was, "Yes, Mom, I hear you."